Let's go over my new build for Goryo's Vengeance. Hello and welcome back, fellow tryhards. It's Tom with Tracker Gaming, bringing you back a brand new video. And today we're going to be going over one of my other not standard decks, one of my modern decks that I've been working on that I finally got completed, and that is Goryo's Vengeance. Now, for those who don't know what Goryo's Vengeance is, it's based off of an instance card that you will see here later on in the deck profile, which is pretty much a reanimator style deck. I want to give a couple shout outs to my buddy Michael and Zach Spears for peeling me onto this deck. This deck is awesome. I was kind of worried about it for a little bit to see if I was actually going to play this deck, but this deck is really fun. Kind of puts if you're big into reanimator style decks, this is the deck to play in modern. This deck is absolutely hilarious at times, and plays in this deck that I've got built so far. It runs the 4-color deck because you can you're running everything but red. The reason I run the 4 colors, and it's really not even 4 colors, it's more Esper Goryos. But you put the one little splash of green in there, the one land that can produce green, so you can hard cast your Atraxa. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the land base. So the land base we have here, we have our 4 flooded strands. This is your white-blue fetch land. This can get you to your Surveil lands if you're going first. This can get you to your Shadowy Backstreet, or your Hedge Maze, which is your one splash of green, so you can hard cast Atraxa if you get to that point in the game. This card is just really solid in order to be able to fetch for your other lands that you might need for your mana fixings. Other fetch lands, we run 2 Marsh Flats. I think this is kind of standard. Again, this can search your Shadowy Backstreet. This can search your Watery Grave, your Godless Shrine, your all kinds of other stuff. These can search your your Meticulous Archive. It just gets you to your mana fixing. That's pretty much all it is. We have your 4 copies of Polluted Delta. I know I've got one that's the OG Onslaught, and then 3 that are Modern Horizons. But this is probably the best dual land in the deck because you're running a lot of black-blue stuff. You're mainly leaning into the blue side of this deck. This is really important. For able to do your combo, same thing, and protect your combo really for like Flare of Denial and your counter spells that you have in the deck. This also helps you get into your colors for Goryos because it does have black. So your shock lands, we have 1 Godless Shrine. We run 2 Hollowed Fountains, and we run 1 Watery Grave. So that's just, again, that's kind of your mana fixing, and then your Surveil lands, which are pretty important. We run Meticulous Archive, 1 Hedge Maze, which is your green-blue. We're going to run the blue-white, green-blue, and the white-black, the Shadowy Backstreet. All these are really important to the combo, are really just good ways to dig, and if you see, another thing to note is if you surveil a big creature or a legendary creature off of this, this allows you to bin it, and if you have another black land, like if you're trying to push really early and you have more Goryos in your hand, if you got like multiple Goryos, you can go ahead and push real hard to try to get the rest of the stuff that you want to get, and just kind of go ahead and jam a big creature right off the rip with like pitch a Atraxa or a Gristlebrand. So really, really strong for that. And then, of course, your 3 basics. We have 1 plains, 1 island, and 1 swamp. And that is the lands for the deck so far. Next we're going to get into is the instants and sorceries. We run 3 Flare Denial and 1 Force Negation. So the reason I run these instead of 4 Force Negations is this deck runs a lot of 2-drops that are blue. I've thought about trying out Tammy on the deck, just to be able to draw cards and kind of cycle through more. But it's also a good 1-drop that can get you a Flare Denial target. So, for those who don't know, a Flare Denial is instant speed, 2 blue, 1 colorless. Or you could sack a creature in addition to, or instead of paying the mana cost, and it just has counter target spell. So it's just a regular counter spell. You can get rid of Philagi or a Thunder Trap Trainer. This is good if you run multiples or if you've got everything you need and you've got like a Thunder Trap Trainer or another blue card in your hand that you can just pitch for free. Again, this is very strong in the deck. but that's why I run flares over that. It's just easier to see. And then we have your ways to dig, which is your Faithful Mending. It's instant speed with flashback, white, blue, and a colorless. You can gain 2 life, draw 2 cards, and discard 2 cards. This is a way to get, if you draw into a Goryo's and you've got like 2 legendaries in your hand, you can go ahead and pitch that, and it gives you 2 big boys in the graveyard. So this is really helpful. Being able to flash this back for 3 can help you win some games as well. I'm only running 3 of these. I had 4 in my previous list and kind of shaped it down a little bit to fit some other decks in here. Next instant we have here is, of course, the staple of the deck, and that is your Goryo's Vengeance. So for those who don't know, this is a 2-drop, which is insane. It's colorless and a black. Instant, it says return target legendary creature from your graveyard onto the battlefield, pretty much, or put it into play. This creature gains haste. Remove it from the game or exile it at the end of your turn. So the fun thing about this is whenever you bring out a creature, you can bring out like a Gristlebrand or an Atraxa or an Olamog. You can bring out any of those big cards with this card, and the Atraxa will still get her trigger. Your Olamog will be very big if you have any of the exiled cards. That's why I'm saying that earlier, if you have an Olamog in the graveyard already and you want to really push game for turn 3, you can bring out an Atraxa from your graveyard or a Gristlebrand, like I said earlier, swing in with it, and then it gets exiled next turn. If you have an Olamog in the graveyard, you can use a second Goryo's, bring it back, and you have a Gristlebrand or a Atraxa, which it's going to at least have 7+1/+1 counters on it, and it'll have Annihilator 7 to Annihilator 8. And in some instances, depending on what you tech for, it can hit Annihilator 9. So this is really, really strong with just the deck. And there is a way, so it is a drawback to have to exile that creature. So we have a way around that, and none other than Ephemerate. This blinks your creatures. So after you swing, usually in your post-combat main phase, you're going to want to Ephemerate that creature, especially if it's an Atraxa, because Atraxa helps you dig for more creatures, more gas, more Goryos, more Ephemerates. So this can be these 2 cards are your main like 2-card combo pretty much in the deck that will get you to where you need to be and potentially, if not, win the game earlier. The next cards that we have here are the sorceries. As of right now, we are running 2 prismatic endings and a pest control, because there is a lot of Boros energy running around, and what better way to do that is to board wipe for 2 for all 1-drops. And prismatic ending is just a good spot removal card. And then we go on to the last of it. This is the creatures. What is a black-blue deck without a playset of frogs? This card is... I love the artwork, first off. Frogs are absolutely great. This is just a killer 2-drop. It's a 1/2 for black and a blue. And whenever it enters the... whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you get to draw a card. And then you can discard a card at instant speed to put a +1/+1 counter on Psychic Frog. And we can float the frog. We can exile 3 cards from the graveyard, and Psychic Frog gains flying until the end of the turn. So this card is extremely strong. If you open up this and maybe a legendary creature and you don't have a way to get rid of it, you can use your Psychic Frog to not only get it into the graveyard for your Goryos, but you also get to put a +1/+1 counter on him. So this is really really strong too. Another thing too, if you have Olamog the Defiler in the deck and you want to float your frog and get a little bit extra damage, what you can do is you can exile one of your bigger creatures, and it allows you to get bigger Olamog pretty much. So you have a bigger Olamog that has Annihilator, 7 to 10 depending on what you're running. The next card that we have here is your other 2-drops. We have your Philagi Archaeologists. This card gets cards into the graveyard for you, and it helps you get into your Ephemerates, your Goryos, your Flare Denials if you're trying to protect your combo. Lets you mill 3 cards, put a non-creature, non-land from those 3 that were milled this way into your hand. If you don't, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on this. Again, where I was still learning this deck, I didn't realize that one of the other things that people can do with this card is you can Ephemerate it, bounce it, bring it back, mill another 3, and potentially hit a Goryo's or another Ephemerate, or hit both off of 2 different triggers, and you just have the full combo in your hand off of 1 card and an Ephemerate. So this card I think is better than the Thunder Trap Trainer in that way, because Thunder Trap Trainer puts all the cards on the bottom of your deck in a random order. So you have to go digging for those again, or you just have to shuffle back and like you have to fetch for something and have to reshuffle. So that's the perks of having a Philogy. But I will say I also run your 3 Thunder Trap Trainers. I do have one of the bundle versions, so you get a couple more of those. But these have Offspring 4, so you can pay a total of 6 mana and be able to pretty much look at the top. You can look at the top 4 cards of your deck. Same thing, you reveal a non-creature, non-land from among them. Put it into your hand. Reveal it, then put it in your hand, and then shuffle the rest, or put the rest on the bottom at a random order. So this card is pretty solid. I've had this card kind of screw me over a couple times for the fact that I'll hit all my big creatures off of 3 out of the 4, or all 4 of the cards that I look at this way, and I have to put them on the bottom. If I don't have any other ones in the near the top, then I'm just kind of waiting, and I'm having to bank on a fetch land to potentially hit another big creature. The other 2 creatures we have 2 Solitude. I want to bump this up a little bit more. This card does come up because you can pitch an Ephemerate or a Prismatic Ending or Pest Control to exile something and evoke this. Another thing you can do with the evoke trigger on the stack is you can Ephemerate this, and it stays on the field. So being able to Ephemerate it, exile something else, bring it back off of the Ephemerate, let it stick, exile a second card is very, very strong. Being able to just keep blinking that and keep getting the value that you so need out of this card. So this card might go up in this list. I would probably change this a little bit, but this card is really, really good. And the last 2 up here before we get to the legendary creatures is a new card I'm trying out, Emperor of Bones. So this comes from Modern Horizons 3. Has it's a 2/2 with at the beginning of your combat, this on your turn, exile up to 1 target creature or target 1 card from your exile 1 card from a graveyard. And where this comes in is the adaptability. So adapt pretty much says if it doesn't have any +1/+1 counters on it, put a +1/+1, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it with adapt 2. So you wait a turn, you can get turn to this. If you've got another big creature, like if you surveil a big creature, you can exile it out of your own graveyard, and then at the beginning of combat, during that turn, you can go ahead and exile that card out of your graveyard. And then it has the effect where whenever you adapt it pretty much, or whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Emperor of Bones, you can put an exiled creature that was exiled by this card onto the battlefield with the finality counter on it. It gains haste, and you get to sack it you have to sack it at the next end step. So this card lets you recycle some of your exiled cards that may be exiled in the post sideboard games. This lets you do a little bit more with that. So if they have like an Unlicensed Hearse or a Soul Guide Lantern or something that gets rid of your big creatures in the graveyard, you can play this, adapt it, and then bring it back, and just be able to. Well, you have to exile it with this card. So I misspoke there, but this allows you to exile a card from your graveyard and get to the point where you can bring back another big creature and swing with it. So being able to bring back one of your big boys and one of the big hitters of the deck is very, very important. And what would a Goryo's deck be without the 4 Atraxas? So this card is probably the one main target you're trying to get to, because it lets you see literally the rest of the deck. For those who don't know, this is a 7-drop for the color palette everything but red and 3 colorless. It has Flying, Vigilance, Death Touch, and Lifelink. Whenever this card enters the battlefield, reveal the top 10 cards of your library. For each card type, you may put a card of that type among the revealed cards into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So you have creature, you know, it's not the, you can't grab a legendary creature and a regular creature. That's a super type, I think it's what it's called. But these allow you to get to the other cards that you're trying to dig for. If you're trying to get to an Olamog, you can get there with that. If you're trying to get to another Goryo's Vengeance, because you've already got a big creature in the graveyard, you can grab that. It also gets you to a lot of removal. Like, it pretty much says, find the out in the top 10 cards, add it to your hand. So if there's a sticky situation, this card will usually get you there. This deck only runs, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, this deck only runs like 20 lands from what I've got in my build. But those are that's usually kind of normal for this, because you're pitching a lot of stuff, you're milling a lot, so you're cycling through quite a bit. Then we have your one-ofs. We have your Gristlebrand, which is, of course, banned in Commander, but really good in Modern. 8 drops, 7/7 with flying and lifelink, and you pay 7 life, draw 7 cards. This has also come up in a game. It won me a game during last weekend's RCQ, because I had somebody prismatic ending this, or not prismatic ending. They leyline binding this for 1, and I was like, in response, I'm gonna go ahead and pay 7. I think it was at 11. I was like, I'm gonna pay 7 and go ahead and try to see if I can find an out. And usually when you get to draw 7, you will find the out. So what I ended up doing was I drew 7 with the leyline binding on the stack. I grabbed an ephemerate off the top of the pay 7, draw 7. So I just ephemerated him. So he didn't get to attack that turn because I Goryo'd him, but he got to stick around. So I was able to kind of have a flying lifelink 7/7 on the field, just in case something would happen. The next one we have is by far one of the biggest creatures, is the biggest creature in the deck, and is very much so a game ender if you see him. And that's Olamog the Defiler. Olamog the Defiler, I'm not going to say never. You will most likely never cast this card for its actual hard cost. But the perks of having this card is it has ward sack 2 permanents, so that's insane as it is. And whenever it enters the battlefield, it enters that with X amount of +1/+1 counters equal to the greatest mana value of cards among exile. So you were able, if you again have that Gristlebrand, if it had got leyline binding, or if I played a Goryo's for a turn just to try to dig, swung with it and it exiled during my next turn, or during the end of that turn, then I was going to be able to give this 8 +1/+1 counters. And that's not the best part. It has Annihilator X, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on this creature. So if you have an 8 drop, he gets Annihilator 8. This card is insane. This card is probably the game ender of all game enders if he gets to swing, because that attack trigger is ridiculous. And then my own spicy tech for this, because I enjoy this card so much. It's from the new Duskmourn set. I love this set, and I think this card has also single-handedly won me games against a lot of graveyard heavy decks. And that is Valgavoth, Terror Eater. So this is one of the new Duskmourn cards. For those who haven't seen it, it's got Flying Lifelink, and it's a 9/9 with ward sack 3 non-land permanents. And if a card that I didn't control would be put into an opponent's graveyard, exile it instead, and then during my turn I may play those cards exiled with this effect. If I cast a spell this way, I can pay life equal to its mana cost rather than its mana value. So this card is really strong if you're playing against a lot of other decks. If you're playing against Boros Energy and they just start exiling stuff to try to get rid of it, or try to get rid of other things, then you can play those cards as long as this card is on the field. This card can win you games just by stealing your opponent's stuff. So I think this card is not seeing a whole lot of play right now, but this is definitely going in my list right now just for the fact that this card is also good in the mirror match. It eats up the Flage in the Boros Energy match. This card is really strong, because again, one of the things you can do is if you have this in your graveyard and they go Flage to you, you can go ahead and go Valgavoth if you have 3 open mana and just decide to wait till your opponent's turn to play a card, or to play Goryo's, because the Goryo's is instant speed. They go, say they go Flage to Lightning Helix your face for 3. In response, with the escape trigger on the stack, you can Goryo's to bring this out, and then Flage will never hit the graveyard. It will go into their exile, and you can either leave it there or you can Flage them for it. But the only problem is you have to give it back to them, because if I'm not mistaken, this whenever you play those cards from exile, they go back to the graveyard. So this card is really strong in this list, and I really enjoy this card. Let's go ahead and get onto the sideboard. So we have your Control S cards with Surgical Extraction and your Thought Seizes. Good to see your opponent's opening hand and peel through it some and find some cards that you want. Best case scenario, you open up these two together and hit a big card in their combo or just in one of their big threats in the deck, and you peel it out of their hand for 1, pay 2 life, get all of that out of their hand and the rest out of their deck. So this card is great. Really good against Boros because you're able to, if they hit a Flage in the deck, you can just Thought Seize, rip it out of their hand, and then Surgical, and be able to rip all the Flages, all the big threats out. Same thing with being able to hit Blood Moon, because Blood Moon can hinder this deck if you don't see your Celestial Purges. These cards are very much so essential to see. And the next cards we have are your negates. We have your 1 Force of Negation. That you see the second one that we have, and 2 Spell Snares to counter mana value 2. Any sort of spell that's mana value 2. So this can be really strong against your other counter decks. If somebody goes to counterspell something, you can pay 1 instead, and then they waste 2 mana. You just use 1. You've also got your extra Force Negation just in case you find a heavier control matchup. Your other and last counter spells, you have your 3 Consign to Memory. This is good for One Ring. This is good for the Mirror Match. Whenever Atraxa goes off, you can go ahead and negate it. Or if they go to, say it gets to the point where they hard cast a Ulamog the Defiler, you can negate it. So that is really, really strong, I think, as well. This is also good against like the Sowing Microspawn deck that rips lands out. Really strong on that too. We also have your board wipes, which is the 2 Wrath of the Skies and your 1 Supreme Verdict. Wrath of the Skies I like pretty good because it hits both enchantments and artifacts, so this can be really important too. In like Amulet Titan matchup, all kinds of other, just any sort of Tron deck can just kind of peel through it. So I enjoy those pretty much. And Supreme Verdict is just Supreme Verdict, man. It's really good. Can't be countered, destroy all creatures. It's awesome. And then lastly, we have your 2 Teferi Time Ravelers. This says your opponent cannot play on your turn. You are not countering my Goryos. That's what I say. That's final. So being able to shut your opponent off during your turn is crucial at sometimes. So this can be very oppressive at times. Just being able to say, no, you're not going to be able to play on my turn. But guys, that's going to be it for this video. Before I let you go, there's a few things that I want to let you know. I will be opening up a full collector case of Foundations here in the upcoming weeks. So I'm pretty excited. Again, don't forget to support your local store. And if you get the chance and if you want to support my local store, known as Eastern Kentucky Cards and Collectibles here in Betsy-Lane, Kentucky. They are awesome. They have a lot of product that I've needed for my Commander decks, for my Modern decks, and for my Standard decks. They have been an absolute help. And a lot of the community here is just absolutely awesome. They've helped me kind of guide me through some of the new things where I've been out of the game for a while. So if you get the chance to support my local store. Also, I'll be working on a lot of Standard decks here coming up because for those who don't know, Standard season is about to be in full swing coming up. So we're about to end the RCQ season for Modern and go into, I think, 2 different Standard seasons. So I'll be playing a lot of Standard. Hopefully I get to see some of you guys at some of these events and these local RCQs, potentially at an RC at some point. But if you get the chance, please stop by, say hey if you know who I am. If you don't, I'll still meet and greet you as normal. But for those, again, thank you guys for sticking around. Thank you guys for helping me out throughout my new Magic journey. And don't forget, try hard, try hard. We'll see you next time, guys.